Next, from Chicago, Timothy Killeen, the president of the University of Illinois, delivers an address at the City Club of Chicago on how the University of Illinois system is contributing to the economic growth of Illinois. This runs about 40 minutes.
I'm really so proud and humbled that the University of Illinois system shares your mission. We reaffirmed that commitment just last year to a new set of guiding principles that were adopted to address hot-button issues currently facing our universities and campuses across the country. It ensures that we promote, as you do, the public good, not just through world-class education and research, but through a spirit of civic engagement that we have carried since our first class graduated 150 years ago, a milestone that we celebrated last month. So it challenges us to never stop working on behalf of the taxpayers of Illinois, the taxpayers whose generous support has just been reaffirmed, thankfully, and we're so delighted with that. And it's helped us to make us one of the nation's most accomplished and respected universities. So like you, we're determined to continue to make a difference at every level of society, eliminating barriers to equity, helping solve some of the most pressing social technical challenges of our time, and finding new avenues for relevance. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce and maybe reintroduce a little bit some of the members of our leadership team who are here today. So if you could all just stand for a moment, I hope you'll join me welcoming them after I call their names. We have three trustees. Trustee Ramon Cepeda is with us, Trustee Don Edwards, and our newest trustee, Sandy Pearl, and we have a fourth, Pat Fitzgerald, also. So we have four trustees. And then, not quite a trustee, but the treasurer of the Board of Trustees, and our very distinguished Lester McKeever is also with us today. We have Dee Dee Williams, Secretary of the Board of Trustees and of the University, Michael Amaritas, who spoke to you recently, and if you didn't know, I'm the straight man for Michael. He's the one with the humor, and I hate going after him, because if I go before him, I can get away with being a straight man. Going after him, people say, well, where's the sense of humor? But anyway, it is what it is. Robert Jones, our Chancellor, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Bob Wilson, Executive Vice President of the University of Illinois System. Ed Seidel, Vice President for Economic Development and Innovation, and the leading genius behind our new innovation agenda, which I'll get to. Avijit Ghosh, Vice President and Chief Financial Officer and Controller. And what I call the Toms, Tom Barrow, University Counsel, and Tom Hardy, Office of Government Relations. So, and there are others of a magnificent leadership team, and I know a lot of you believe this. You get the right people and you authorize them and delegate responsibility. It's amazing what can happen. And I think University of Illinois is in that wonderful situation right now. I would like, with your indulgence, everybody who has some kind of connection to the University of Illinois system, any one of our three universities, former, prior, degrees, almost granted, whatever you like to take, to raise your hand just momentarily and look around. You can see, I think, in that forest of hands, the impact that the U of I system has had and will have on the future. And we just graduated 22,000 human beings in the last few weeks, and my hand is still kind of dropping off from all of that. So 150 years ago, the Chicago Tribune wrote an editorial in which it said, "This new University of Illinois is a farce." Believe it or not. Now, I've forgiven them since then, and it was something to do with divinity schools and secular schools, etc. We've come a long way in 150 years, and it's been a fixture for all but 50 years of our state's existence, and we're wrapping up the sesquicentennial celebration last month as we ramp up our bicentennial party. Along the way, the U of I has developed a range of personas that vary widely depending on who you ask and even where you ask. So to many across the state, U of I is still synonymous to Urbana-Champaign. The land grant Big Ten, leafy, beautiful campus that dates nearly to the Civil War. It was the first university after the Civil War, incidentally, to admit women. Think about that impact that that's had. First marching band. We invented the marching band. 20-plus Nobel Prizes. And innovations as long as your arm, and I could give you the full litany, but my favorite today is indoor air conditioning, which I think has changed the face of the nighttime planet as you look down from space. Then here in Chicago, we have a fast-growing campus, 20+% increase in enrollment freshmen last year, over 30,000 students now, the fast-growing campus on the city's west side, home to one of the nation's largest medical schools, ranked by the Wall Street Journal in 23 in the country for public universities, shooting up in momentum, and also a long list of innovations that are very important. The one I'm most proud of today is the HIV/AIDS drug that is delivered through partnership with the UN across all of Africa, pretty much for free, and that's a huge impact on a very important socio-technical challenge. So UIC, people will often say, and I can't say this when my wife is in the room, is it like UCLA? And I say, UCLA what? Because it is the only, to my knowledge, land-grant, comprehensive, research-intensive university, Carnegie One class in a world city. UCLA is not a land-grant. And I would say Arizona State is important, but Phoenix ain't Chicago. And then at UIS, we have the Right Side Regional University in the shadows of the state capitol. We have 200 students in there now as interns in the state capitol. I think they talk that machinery and the budget discussions in the right direction. National distinction as a leader in online education. And of course, Abraham Lincoln, many of you don't know, had Welsh forebears. I grew up in Wales, and his maternal grandparent was called Morris, and lived in a North Wales town called Yshtybifan. Since I do come from Wales, and I'm probably the only University of Illinois president who ever will, because it's a tiny country, it doesn't teach ego, because we're right next to this other place called England, which is pretty domineering and dominating. And it's got a language that's almost impossible to pronounce. But I do want to teach you one word, if I might, because I think it's symbolic of what I think University of Illinois is, and it's an easy one to pronounce. It's Hoyle, rhymes with loyal. So can you all say Hoyle? Hoyle, okay. So easy to remember, rhymes with loyal. It's Hoyle with an H guttural. And what it means is courage, bravery, heart, stick-with-itness, persistence, getting things done, moving forward. It's how you win rugby games sometimes, but you take your Hoyle with you. And I think that is something that we have in spades at the University of Illinois in Hoyle. And so did Lincoln, by the way. Also, Jefferson was Welsh. I have to, when you come from a country like that, you have to drop names. Otherwise, they say, where's that? What part of England is it? And that's really, really difficult for me to take. So we have 3 universities. We have a new marketing strategy. I hope you've seen some of and heard some of the things on the radio and the billboards and so forth. And when we launched that marketing strategy, Tom Hardy tells me that our hits to our website went up 16-fold. So we have been, I think, guilty of hiding our light under a bit of a bushel, and we don't want to do that because the impact is extraordinary and we need to move forward. Each of our universities is a heavyweight in their own class. So when I spoke to this group shortly after taking office 3 years ago, and incidentally 3 years is like past infant death syndrome for a university president. It's into adolescent hormone time period, I think. So if I sound a little bit puppy-like and optimistic, it's just that's who I am. But we're on a roll. I hope you can see that and feel it as your university. So when I spoke last time, this is a slide that I showed then, which I'm about to show now. I came up with this hokey equation cobbled together as a geophysicist. Everything is systems, and I do with equations. I'm still waiting for the royalty checks, but they haven't started rolling in. But for me, it is simple, and it rings as true then as now as it did then. Our impact, and we're all about impact, is a product, a multiplication of excellence and scale. You can be excellent and affect a few people, or you can have massive scale with a watered-down effect. If you have both, you have impact. The UVI system packs a wallop on both counts. But it also checks off another box that really rockets our power into rarefied air, and that's the exponent that I call magic. Now, if, you're all mathematicians, of course, but if that magic is less than unity, you're limiting your impact. If it's 2, 5, 100, you're shooting up non-linearly. Now, so what that means, that's where institutional leadership comes in. That's where a board of trustees that's determined and outbound, that's where you make the case for interdisciplinary research and open your doors for access and success and civic engagement. Magic involves collaboration, collaborative settings, leadership, fearlessness. We need to take risks and not be risk averse. Academic freedom is very important. We need brilliant scholars who can express that brilliance, and a community that's in full support. So you're part of the magic that is in the exponent and increases the impact of the University of Illinois system. And these are game-changing institutional attributes that, so obviously I'm paid to do this, but it is a special place, one with excellence and scale raised to the power of magic. And so this is the second time. You invite me back in 3 years, I'll have the same equation probably. Our universities, though, today comprise the state's largest educator and pump nearly $14 billion into the Illinois economy every year. And that's an external group that, not us doing the analysis, but an external group that's looking at economic impact. $14 billion, just if you know, is bigger than Caterpillar's global number. So we're big and we have Illinois in the name, so we're not going anywhere. We transform lives on a large scale. Nearly 84,000 students last fall, a record high for the 5th straight year. And Bob Wilson and I look over the enrollment numbers every week, and we're on track for another world-breaking record the coming fall. So we'll exceed that record. And in fact, we're on track for our strategic enrollment plan. In fact, we have a plan, and we're actually doing it, which is not altogether usual sometimes in higher education, but we're following our plans. And as I mentioned, 22,000 new graduates into the workforce annually, and that's enough to populate a city the size of Charleston or East Moline or Park Forest every single year, the talent and the human capital that flows out. Building on a global alumni base that is well over 700,000 strong, including 400,000 in Illinois. And just to put that 700,000 in context, University of Michigan is like 68, so 580,000 living alumni. So we're bigger than the University of Michigan system. And I was there for 20 years, so I can sort of talk about it this way. There's nothing I want better than to beat them on some gridirons for now. But anyway, we'll work on that. Together, our universities produce leading-edge scholarship and discovery that helps drive innovation, progress, and economic growth. And we have a nearly $1 billion annual research portfolio that ranks us among the top university systems in the nation and in the top 25 universities worldwide for innovation. But as Thomas Jefferson once said, who was Welsh, like I said, or at least he believes came from Snowdonia, I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past. So we have developed new strategic plans to do even more. We have a strategic framework that's already been mentioned, and each of our universities has its own strategic plan within that. And we want to do nothing short of reinventing public higher education for the 21st century to meet the needs of students, society, and industry. It's the land-grant mission, but modernized and projected into the 21st century. So it's not about being ranked in a particular ranking, but it's that impact that I talked about with excellence and scale. So our plans do raise the bar to a very high rung. We want to be the global model for higher education, a place where the world turns for pioneering ideas. We are already on the way. We do have momentum. It's picking up steam even during the two-year budget impasse. And there's something about shared adversity that brings out the best in people. I think there was a coming together, there was a tightening of the belt, and there was a sense of purpose that has really allowed us to weather that period effectively and come out stronger than ever. We are committed to continue our enrollment growth that runs counter to most public universities in Illinois, but a plan to top 93,000 students, which is a nearly 15% increase by 2021. So watch that number. and we're on track to get to that number. Predominantly Illinois natives. 4 out of every 5 of our undergraduates are Illinois residents. Again, unlike Michigan, where it's 42% of University of Michigander residents. So we're on track. We know we are for the state of Illinois. We know we're large. We need to keep that excellence at the highest level. First-time freshman applications and admissions are up over 6% as we speak, which are both world record highs for the University of Illinois system. So in terms of the demand side, there's no question that our product is in demand. And we've admitted over more than 7% Illinois residents this year. Enrollment growth was supported by an in-state tuition freeze that we put in place that will extend to a 4th consecutive year next fall. So Michael and I, who arrived about the same time, and Robert came a little bit later, we've not raised tuition for in-state residents by a dime in now 4 years. That's the longest tuition freeze for 4 decades since the 1970s. So if you're looking for a commitment for affordability, access, you don't need to look much farther than that fact. And that system-wide enrollment has increased nearly 7% since in-state tuition last increased in the fall of 2014. As you know, there's a 4-year guarantee on tuition too, so we're trying to make our product affordable. And part of that, frankly, is competitive aspects. We want to outcompete, not just on excellence and quality, we want to outcompete on cost as well, our competitor universities. And we want to really work on to stem the out-migration of students, high school students and graduating students from Illinois, and provide them with the kind of opportunities to have wonderful careers, raise families, buy houses, contribute to the tax base of the state after they graduate. So our mantra is affordability, access, completion. You've got to do your homework and complete. But then success in the civil workforce. So we're also investing in infrastructure, and this is probably not as widely appreciated, but in the last 4 years, we have invested $1.2 billion in our physical infrastructure to ensure that the students who come truly do get a world-class education in the laboratories and classroom settings, et cetera. So over the last, that's the number over the last 5 years, I should say. And the list includes a host of projects that reflect our unwavering commitment to transformative experience for students. And they include our first ever student union in Springfield. If you haven't visited that campus, please go. It's a beautiful campus. And this is we like to think of it as the hearthstone of that campus. It's a gathering place. It creates a quad-like field. And in fact, when we're looking at the applications and enrollments, we're looking at numbers like 17% there, which I think is driven in part by the fact that we are on the move. First ever student union in Springfield. It's not like a replacement student union. They didn't have one. You've all seen probably this wonderful building arising that's very visible from Roosevelt and so forth, and we'll have, I'm sure Michael was planning a big red dot there somewhere, an innovative residence and learning center rising at UIC that is a pioneering form of public-private partnerships. No state funding is going into this, but this will enable UIC to have more residential students. It's being known primarily as a commuter school, students coming and going. We're now going to have more residential students, and that's important. And then, of course, the Siebel Center for Design in Urbana, which is going up as we speak, a unique new hub of student-focused learning and discovery. Which is going to transform the way undergraduate teams are formed and work collectively on interdisciplinary problems in this wonderful new setting. So these projects together, and there's just a handful of the longer list, reflect the high priority that the Board of Trustees has placed on our facilities in January. And the board has directed me to work with our chancellors and provosts to develop now a long-range capital plan to ensure that these state-owned properties, future bricks and mortar investments, support our strategic goals. That's exciting prospect. We are also, of course, investing in faculty. The scholarship and the brilliance is based on key people, and we do have a challenge here that we're looking at. Over the last several years, as I mentioned, our student enrollment has grown 7%. Our faculty growth has only been 2%. I want to redress that. We need to have the appropriate number of faculty. So we're going on a tear for faculty recruitment. So if you're worried about poaching, etc., we're going to be the poachers, not the poachees. We've started that already. And last month, I announced plans to work with campus leadership on an initiative that will be a recruiting initiative for faculty. They're at the heart of everything we do. World-class talent behind the teaching and innovation defining our excellence. We intend to expand the total number of faculty by several hundreds over the next 5 years, but as with everything we do, there'll be a careful analytical process where we go through, look strategically at growth, demand, supply areas and where the needs are, and we'll have a strategic plan that we will, by heck, will follow in the next several years on growth in faculty. And that's possible only because we've been managed fiscally well. And that's thanks to a lot of the leadership that we've had. Cost control, efficiencies, we've been through a hiring freeze in administration. We have done everything we can to ensure that we are using shared services where appropriate and that our costs are contained. And now we have restored state funding, and even though we haven't raised tuition in 4 years, we have more students. So in fact, there are more dollars coming in because of the larger number of students. And in the last calendar year, our revenue side grew more than 7%, and our expenses grew only 1.6%, which is less than inflation. So we're in a strong financial position. Now, as the state's bond rating goes up, we are going to go up with it because our inherent strength is very good in terms of fiscally. So we're investing in faculty, and we have found $60 million to put down already in the next 3 years. We've made a start on this. This is a matching program to support the startup costs, the one-time start costs. When you recruit in a wonderful scholar, they might need a lab, or they may need graduate students, or infrastructure to support their intellectual endeavors. And these dollars are available now for our provosts and our deans to go out recruiting superstars and or proto-superstars or to be superstars. But we want the floods of these important careers to be spent here at the University of Illinois. I'm excited to announce that Bob Wilson, I think next week, will name the first set of star faculty recruits. And I believe it's 6 or 7, some number like that, including from some famous universities. Don't know it yet, but we're about to make a claim here. And then, of course, you probably all know about the Discovery Partners Institute, or I hope you know about the Discovery Partners Institute. We have plans to expand our impact in terms of an engine of progress for the state and economic growth. And I really want to thank Deputy Governor Munger for all her work in this regard. And of course, Governor Rauner has been a visionary leader behind this, but this is a through and through bipartisan effort across the state to build out and to take advantage of the assets we have. The intellectual assets, the physical assets, the arable soil, the fresh water, the institutional capacity, the bandwidth that we have, and I always stress bandwidth because Chicago has more bandwidth than any other place on the planet, and that's power. We have a 300 gigabit per second link to Amsterdam from UIC, for example, and that's a huge pipe. And that's going to be important for the future of industries, all industries that need data management, data mining, visualization, subsetting, looking at smart systems and how things work. So our Discovery Partners Institute will contribute to the state GDP with global impact. It'll take advantage of the placement, not just in Chicago, but statewide through a set of hubs that will be distributed across the whole state, fostering collaboration between students, faculty, and companies, small, medium, large companies, solving problems, creating new jobs, allowing our students access to interesting projects, letters of reference, internships, and potentially the opportunity to build their own companies from scratch. And so this is a big idea, but we are a big institution, and there will be many partners, including as founding partners, University of Chicago and Northwestern. But there are many others, international as well, that will be coming to the table. And this will be home to literally hundreds of world-class researchers, top faculty from across our system, and thousands of students coming in and out and working closely with the private sector. And, you know, you've all heard it's the economy stupid. Our version of that, it's the student experience. It's all about our students. So when we interact with the private sector, and we do that intensively, we talk about the value proposition, the bottom line, et cetera. For us, it's the student experience. When the student experience, making a world-class experience for our students, matches what companies need, then watch out. Things can really, really happen. That's where magic really occurs. So DPI, as we call it, is not dots per inch, will be a beautiful new institute on currently vacant land along the Chicago River. That will be a magnet destination for the intellectual power that our universities together can bring to the table. And this is a rendering, and that's an idea of what this new institute will look like in Chicago. And as you all know, I hope, just a few days ago, Governor Rauner signed the budget, this year's budget, which includes $500 million to initiate this project. So it. That's very exciting for us. We are, you know, make no small plans, right, is the Illinois mantra and the Chicago mantra. This is a big plan, and when people think about Silicon Valley and catching up, it said, I don't like that either, that kind of language. We're going to leapfrog Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley's 1970s innovation. It's spinning things out. We're going to spin them in. We're going to spin them in and get the adjacency, the intellectual adjacency, the vibrancy, the excitement, the magic to make things happen right here in Chicago and across the state in these hubs. And last time I looked, Chicago is the capital of the Midwest. And the Midwest is a third of the GDP of the United States. Chicago doesn't have competition, I don't think, much from Cleveland or Detroit, or perhaps, I don't know, I hope I'm not goring any oxes here today, but let's take advantage of that setting and that placement and the bandwidth and the institutional magnificence that we have here. And this, I have to say, is going to be about job and wealth creation, but as importantly, it's about the creation of social equity. Building capacity, building our social system so that fewer people are left behind, there's more wholesome opportunities for society in general. And that's a wildly exciting thing. If you think about the future of the planet, it's all going to be urban. We can model this future right here, taking advantage of our institutions. And so there's another little picture of the river walk there. The DPI is part of what we call the Illinois Innovation Network, which is an expansion across the whole state, including many hubs, which will be regionally tailored, appropriate, often on educational institutions, components that will be connected together and not competing, but collaborating across space. So this is lifting downstate as much as the Chicago area. And of course, our three wonderful universities will all be strongly participating in this. So the tremendous scale, we have extension offices all across the state. The partnering with other educational institutions and with companies allows a fluidity and a development of human capital that will, in part, reduce the number of high schoolers that leave town for better pastures. We'll retain our graduates when they graduate because there'll be so many opportunities who would want to go anywhere else. And affordability is a big deal. In Silicon Valley, which I've knocked a few things, but I hope not too badly, it can cost you $43,000 to park your car. So we've got to watch out for affordability too, because the next generations are going to want to have access to amenities, want to have social networks, want to be able to move around from job to job in effective ways. And that can be really fostered with a modern form of urban innovation and connected across the state and then, of course, around the world. And there will be some announcements soon about international partners for this as well. It's so do I have to point this there? So you're asking now, well, what is this guy smoking, right? You must be asking, what did he have for breakfast and so forth? But we have a legacy that we can build on. University of Illinois alums founded all these companies. You recognize some of those logos, I hope. You collect those companies together. Last year, they were worth $75 billion. 1 year, 20 companies. We have thousands of companies that are spinning out of the University of Illinois system. This is part of the product. Doesn't even get added into our $14 billion a year economic impact, but the impact of the intellectual creation of new knowledge and the deployment of new knowledge is of inestimable value. And too many of these companies went west or they went east, and which is great. But now we want to keep more of them in our state, and I think that's important for the future. So this, Deputy Governor, is an investment, not a cost. It's an investment in the state, and we can show through econometric studies that $1 from the tax base to the University of Illinois system returns 19% to the tax base every year. Better than my retirement deal. So benefits will be multiple. Benefits to companies, access, expertise, talent recruitment. We also have a legislative agenda that has benefits to the state. We want to be involved in attracting corporations. We want to look at economically distressed. We want to be solving, as the video said, today's family of problems, including inner city problems, and talent recruitment and investment. So watch for our legislative agenda. Part of it we're calling IPAC, for the Illinois Performance and Accountability Commitment. This now has over 30 co-sponsors, both sides of the aisle in Springfield. We haven't asked for it to come to a vote yet, but would reset the relationship between the flagship public university system and the state within which it resides, with a 5-year outlook on predictable funding. Robust, predictable funding is what we're seeking in return for outcome metrics, graduation rates, retention rates, numbers of Illinois residents graduating, financial aid, underrepresented minorities, et cetera. So this would be the most sophisticated, I would say, compact in the country in terms of resetting the relationship between public higher education and the state governance system. And I would say, I hope that you'd agree with me, we need to not go through a period of ups and downs like we've just experienced again. So we're looking at that. Finally, a few other bragging points. We have things to brag about. Our student retention and success is well above the national averages. 89% of our students are retained. They don't bounce out and not get their degrees. 76% of our students go on to graduate, much higher numbers than the national averages. And we want to keep and build upon those kind of metrics. So a degree from the University of Illinois system is worth something. You get a higher first job salary, you pay down your debts faster, you have less debt than national norms, and retention and graduation rates are high. So there's a lot here for you to be proud of. We have launched a philanthropic campaign, and I just want you to remember the number. It's $3.1 billion we are raising, and we are actually halfway there now. We've raised $1.6 billion just in the last 3 years. And it's a composite. It's made up of the Campaign for Illinois that Robert Jones leads. They've raised $1.32 billion towards a goal of $2.25 billion. UIC Ignite, to do with flames, has raised $342 million towards a goal of $750 million. And Reaching Stella in Springfield has raised $21 million towards a goal of $40 million. So with our 700,000 alums and our, I think, the exciting and compelling narrative that we can weave together, we would like your help, of course, in talking up Illinois as a state and its public higher education system. But we're already halfway there. And so I like to say you ain't seen nothing yet, which is also a Welsh term that we used to use. So we have 3 universities, one system, infinite possibilities. President Kennedy once said that things don't just happen, things are made to happen. So we need to be makers. We need to actually have a purposeful, intentional future, and it should be ambitious. If we're not stretching further than we think we can actually realistically get, then we're not doing our job. And it's true even for time-proven entities that are 150 years old. So we're never going to stop working to build on this momentum. We have our strategic framework, and this is unanimously approved by the board 3 or so years ago now, where we entitled it the Public's University. Of the public, belonging to the public. That means you and everybody else in the state. And this was one of these apocryphal phrases that I was told sometime that President Lincoln used way back when. But we can't find it, so I can't attribute it to President Lincoln, but it's something he might have said or might have wanted to say. And so we've co-opted it anyway as the Public's University. So, and the subtitle is Optimizing Impact for the Public Good, which, as you remember now, is about excellence, it's about scale, and it's about the magic that you can bring to the table with vibrant, effective, principled, full of integrity, leadership, and support. So thanks for inviting me. Thanks for your time.